Therapist, wife, mom, blogger, and recently author of Healing of the Heart. And that is the name of this podcast. I want to welcome you tonight to episode number 6. So excited. Part 2 of When the Obstacle is You-Sis. I don't know, my daughter inspired that last part. Kyra Henry, she's so funny. Welcome. And you're listening to this music in the background. This is William Murphy. I'm always introducing some new music that I find that I feel is very inspiring. At least it does something to my heart. Hey, we can't ignore the heart. We have to be able to know how to navigate the heart and the issues of life because they affect the heart. So I don't know. It's apropos, I think, for Healing of the Heart podcast. So it's 8:01. Welcome tonight. I'm so excited to be here. I love doing this podcast. I say this every time I get on. Just a little bit of an anecdote before I get started. Tonight, I'm going to stop the music. Hang on, guys. If I can find my phone. I love this song. Face to face. Face to face. Let's jam it out, guys. A few more minutes. Give other persons a chance to join, then I'll say the anecdote before tonight's podcast. Face to face. Face to face. Clearly. Face to face. I love that song. Oh my goodness. I cannot get enough of that song. Again, I found this on the iTunes, the subscription that I have, and I've been playing this song all week. Oh my goodness. I don't know, you should listen to it. It's called Face to Face by William Murphy, and you're going to hear me play it at different points in the podcast this evening. Very calming. Okay, so I don't know your spiritual affiliation or connection, but I don't hide mine. I sometimes I'm a little bit shy and use the word Christian because I know in our changing world that can have so many different connotations and denotations for persons, but essentially, I do have a spiritual connection. I often talk about God and my work and my life, and I leave room for other persons to engage with that or to share, their connection. So I typically tend to, love music that's in that genre, and it's just very calming. And because what you listen to, it really does feed your mind and feed your heart, and it really influences that black box. If you've listened to any of my podcasts or Monday Power Tips, I talk very passionately about what the black box is. And essentially, that's your soul, that's your spirit, in today's world, they call that energy or your aura, and it's important to protect that. And so this music really helps me to do so. So welcome to Healing of the Heart podcast, episode 6, When the Obstacle is You-Sis. Oh my God, all these, S sounds. So anyway, this song, Face to Face, I stumbled upon it, and I've been listening to it all week, and every time I play this song, it just makes me so calm. It brings a level of reflection that just keeps me mindful. We're going to talk about mindfulness tonight, and we're going to talk about moralizing and normalizing judgment, and perhaps, I don't know, how that may or may not, if you're probably not even aware, how that shows up in your life. So funny. So many points to cover tonight. I'm going to try to narrow it because I can go on and on and on. I'm going to pull in different, experiences, professional ones, and personal ones, boundary-oriented speaking, of course. But, this week I've talked to so many women in the NDHI community that so many things that they're unaware, they're on default, they're unconscious, and that black box has been so contaminated that, living lives that really that's not the ones that they want. and having awareness really helps to change and bring about fulfillment in their life. So anyway, back to this song. I hope you'll take a moment to, it's about reflection. It will help you to, I don't know, have a sense of calm. And perhaps if you can't relate to the genre, but maybe you can relate to the words of the song. So I hope you enjoy that. And again, we're going to sprinkle it through tonight. Last couple of weeks, I've been talking about Samuel Midas. He's out of Guyana. I love his music, and it's very inspiring too. You know, music is powerful. There's certain stimulants in life that, help to stimulate the brain, that help to stimulate, proper behavior. One of those healthy stimulants, because there are different type of stimulants in the world today, or overall, but even more so today in our time. But music is a very potent stimulant for the mind and for the brain and for the heart to produce productive behavior and have a sense of harmony. So we're going to sprinkle this song throughout. And if you're listening tonight, I see we have 2 listeners. Thank you so much. I don't know who you are, but maybe you can put in the chat box your name. I'd like to say hi. Which reminds me, the last time I did a podcast, there were persons on, and I was so involved in the podcast, looking at my phone, making sure I was, doing my thing, quote unquote, and I missed communicating. So I said to myself, I'm going to make sure that I look over and glance, and that way I see persons who are on. So give me a shout out, please. Don't leave me lonely. Let me know who you are. I want to talk to you, and I want you to talk to me. I love talking. So yeah. So what are we talking about tonight? Did I introduce myself? I think I did. This is, the 6th podcast, 6th episode, and I always like to talk about what this podcast is not. I think it's important. By now, I think if you've listened to this podcast in the last month or 2, it's only that newer. That's the age of the podcast, only two months old, actually, almost 3. I often repeat this. It bears repeating that this podcast is not about blaming other people. It's not. And if you continue to listen on, more and more, this gets ingrained and this will be enforced. That's one of my goals. And so you understand that you can take the power back and live your life for you rather than pointing fingers at other persons. You lose power that way. So this podcast is not about blaming others. It's not about, judging others. In fact, in my work, I often tell persons, hey, you know what? Judgment, we're going to try to check that. Like you check a baggage on a plane, you don't carry it. So when we're working together, you leave judgment at the door. And it's my hope that as you continue throughout your life outside our doors, that you'll also check judgment at the door and rather take a position of curiosity, being open, and ask questions. Yeah? So that's what this podcast is about. It's not that, but it is about taking a look at, instead of running away from yourself, it's about, in our world, I like to say dissociate, just kind of check out. Instead of checking out and pointing fingers at other persons, what it's really about is, giving you a chance to ask questions, giving a chance to settle down, to listen, ask questions as we're going over, different points in the podcast. I don't know. Even when I'm teaching, at work, we had our women's group this past week. Amazing again. We're in week 5. I think we have 3 more weeks to go. And again, it's checking judgment at the door. Basically, revisioning, like I like that word, revisioning, and redeveloping, your life, developing, strategies, new strategies and resources to help yourself, rather than the ones that were given. And again, we're not judging, we're being curious, because if we point fingers at what was given to us, then that's not going to take us anywhere. But we can question those things and see what we can do with them because we're adults now. So that's what this podcast is about. And, I hope that you'll be curious about what I'm talking about. Last time I invited persons to, hey, take notes, maybe write it down. If something struck a chord, maybe you can email me, maybe you can send me a message or whatever, get a hold of me. So I can probably answer your question or questions more deeply or more personal. So that's what this podcast is about. So the anecdote, pause. Okay, so I'm going to do a little weird sound. Awkward. Okay, so here's the deal. So tonight, before I got on, honestly, it was about maybe 6 o'clock. My sister-in-law calls me and says, you have a podcast? She says, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm cleaning my bathroom and I'm cleaning my room. She says, no, you're not. I say, yes, I am. She says, but you have a podcast tonight. I said, I do, but I have to clean because I'm not doing this tomorrow. I have to get it done. But the truth be told, now that I reflect on it, when I was cleaning, I was actually preparing for the podcast. I already knew what I wanted to talk about, obviously, But when I clean, I don't know for you guys. If I lift weights, if I work out, if I do something, for some reason I have clarity. And it's a joke around here that, I have a type A personality. That's true. You know, over the years I've been rigid. But once again, let's be curious, where did that come from? It has helped me in most cases, but I've had to work through that. Because you know what? When obstacles use you got to pay attention. So I've learned how to, moderate that, make it work for me. And so tonight we're going to be looking at, how that was normalized in my life. How was that norm? How was it normalized that I became so rigid and I have such a rigid personality? My husband often teases that, you've been a great drill sergeant. I'm telling you, Keisha, you would have been a great drill sergeant because you're very strategic, you're very organized, and et cetera, et cetera. But I have to tell you, that doesn't always work well when you're trying to have emotional connection and, very, quality relationships, connecting deeply to your children, to your spouse. Yeah, these are areas that I had to work through. And again, let's be curious. How did I get that way, right? So, one of the obstacles You-Sis part 2 is the topic for tonight, if you're joining us. And there's a third person. I don't know who that is, but welcome. Welcome tonight if you're just joining us. It's the 6th episode of Healing of the Heart. And, this is a good time to say, why am I doing Healing of the Heart? If I know by now most persons know, but I like to kind of slip it in there now and then. Healing of the Heart came out of my own story, all right? This work that I do came out of my own life. And I have to tell you the truth. This book and this podcast, I don't know. Maybe there are other podcasts like this out there. I don't know them. But I have to tell you that in the work that I do, I don't hear the things that I would prefer to hear as a clinician, as a woman, that, have had my own personal struggles and stories. And, I find that there's a need to connect. There's a need to connect with other women that have similar stories and they have yet to find their voice, or they have yet to find a place that their voice can be heard. This is how I feel. And so this is why Healing of the Heart podcast exists. This is why the practice that I do exists. And this is why Healing of the Heart itself, the book, Selected Prose and Poetry, is in existence. Because I believe that there wasn't a place for my voice. There wasn't. How are you a Christian and have gone through, these things, and yet somehow or another you're supposed to be strong and be full of faith, but underneath these things are still percolating and they're never dealt with, and that's not living a fulfilled life. I don't believe, and that's what we're called to do, and that in terms of living a fulfilled life, it doesn't work. You cannot be productive that way. You have to be honest. There needs to be a place for honesty and you're not penalized. There needs to be a place that you can be honest and you're not judged, and I believe that this is the place for that. So that's what this podcast is. So let's get into it then. I don't know. The last time we were together, I talked intensely about the formation of the self. I'm not going to recap that tonight because I believe that I think it's well done in the last podcast. The obstacles You-Sis part 1 and other prior podcast sessions. You can take a listen at that. But I do want to touch on the fact that essentially, if I were to summarize the last session, the formation of the self, self implies others. That's one of the key points. So how you know you become a self? Because in your environment, you've had persons that you saw and you basically imitated them and you mimicked them, and before you know it, you became a self. Now, there's a word I want to introduce to you tonight. I did say it earlier. It's called normalizing judgment, moralizing judgment, and there's a third. Oh, thank you. I saw someone says, I like the show. I like the show. I appreciate that so much because you know what? Here's a pause. I have to say that this is encouraging for me too. This is encouraging for me. And later on, I'll tell you a little bit more about your encouragement to me in terms of this new podcast. So I want to introduce 3 words actually: normalizing judgment, moralizing judgment. Okay? Right. And of course, we talked about the self. So it begs the question then, so if self implies others, right? Let's underscore tonight when the obstacles You-Sis. And we're going to give examples for how the obstacle is still you, is still me. All right, me first. I always like to say me first because, it lowers the bar and it gives persons a chance to be vulnerable, to be honest, and to be open to look at themselves. This is one of the reasons why I love this work so much. If you've ever worked with me, you're listening, you know that this is exactly how my approach is. Because I'm not better than you, period. Yeah, that's beautiful. I like that. I'm not better than anyone. We're here working this through. I just get to be a vessel to do it. So again, self implies others, right? So how does a self get formed? Well, you internalize the behaviors of people around you. And these persons' behaviors and ways of being, you take it in. Look, I mean, from 0 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 9, these are all stages of development, for a girl. And yeah, I say girl, maybe there's a couple of male listening tonight. I do not discriminate. In fact, I often tease because, in my practice, a few men will call and say, "Do you see men?" I'm like, "Of course, we can't discriminate." "Well, it's really about women." I'm like, "Yeah, but we'll see you too. So if you're listening tonight, welcome." Um, so we're talking about the self, right? So we internalize these behaviors and we imitate. And not only do we imitate, but we're also cultivating. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, when our caregivers, depending on their behaviors to us, right, they elicit and they evoke certain emotions and responses out of us. If you can just pause for a second and think about when you were growing up, right, from 3 to 6 or 6 to 8 or 8 to 11, just think about, I don't know, think about where you were. Where were you in those times when you were growing up? Who was set over you? And in those times, do you recall that you were a self? How did it feel? Did it feel good or did it feel not so good? I don't like the word bad. I like to really reflect on that because in those formative years, when you're developing emotions, when your hormones, we call it energy today, this word energy is like so loose, but when that's actually being formed in you with the emotions ingrained in you, that's self, that's the brain, that's the amygdala, that's all working together for you to have a world view about yourself, about relationships, and about others. Yeah. So these interactions between ourselves and persons in our environment, basically, it's all set up to help us to understand what motivates us in our relationships. Let me say that again. All these interactions that we take in our world, we like to say these fancy words, internalize. When we internalize these behaviors, right, essentially, it really sets up what motivates our relationships. So, what does that look like? Well, some people are motivated to perform. I often go back to that. Some persons are motivated to serve. Some persons are motivated to be in a place of power, right? Because power was taken from them, and so forth and so on. If you pay attention to that, then it's no surprise why some of us actually do the vocations that we do, right? It's no surprise that some of us take on, I don't know, professions, vocations, or even volunteer positions or rank and file in the family. It's no wonder why we're in those positions that we're in. Think about that. So I'm going to pause. I like to always pause when I introduce concepts and when I introduce examples of them. And I'm going to play some more music, and then it give me a chance to chat back to the persons who are saying hi to me. And so think about what I just said. Where were you, ages 3 to 6, 6 to 9, 8 to 11? Where were you? Who was involved in your life? Who are the persons that were set over you? And in those moments that you recall, were they positive ones or were they not so positive? And again, I don't like to use the word bad because in my work, we're taught and we're trained to say, to understand rather that we should not totalize. Totalizing simply means that we interpret all our experiences as negative, and they're not all negative. Because even some of the negative ones, when we peel back the layers, we can salvage them, right? So we don't totalize, which is why we don't judge, but we take a look to be curious and to ask questions. So after this pause, we're going to take another look, or a deeper look, I should say, at what normalizing is versus moralizing. So let's listen a little bit more to William Murphy and Face to Face. I like this one. this is a good time to say, I was mentioned earlier talking about the podcast and the fact that it's been 2 months. And I want to take a few seconds here and say thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thank you. 2 days ago, I learned that the podcast had 101 downloads. So that just lets me know that we're talking about something that matters to you and to me. We're talking about something that it seems like it's having impact, and I'm so thankful for that. So I'm just saying thank you. Oh my goodness! And feel free to write me, to email, and maybe some topics or things that I have touched on but didn't delve deeper, or other things that you'd like to hear me talk about on Healing of the Heart. Again, this all came out of Healing of the Heart book, but of course, this is much bigger than that. It's much deeper than that. So again, just a few minutes here, a few seconds here, rather, to say thank you so much for participating in this podcast and for making this, bigger than what it is and reaching more people. Because honestly, that's what it's about. It's not about anything else. It's about relationship and having stable interdependent relationships and better communities. At the end of the day, that's what matters. So let's continue. So we were talking about, when the obstacles You-Sis, oftentimes, so I'm going to give a little bit of, I'm going to digress a little bit, tell a little story, because all of our stories, all of our lives are really about stories. Lots of stories, actually. So just listen up a little bit. So, oftentimes we tend to gravitate towards the obstacle. That obstacle is perhaps rejection. That obstacle is dejection. That obstacle is feeling unimportant. That obstacle is feeling less than. I have walked those paths. I know. So we gravitate towards that. So if you remember earlier, we were talking about, the self and how that gets formed and the different emotions that are elicited and evoked from us. And then as a result, then we essentially carry them forward and we reinforce them over time. So when the obstacle is You-Sis, I'm referencing exactly just that. We gravitate towards those things that we already have inside of us, and it's almost like we attract them. They're like magnets because they do exist inside of us from very early. And so, what does that potentially look like? Well, if you remember from the relationships that's built from early, the motivation for why is it? If you stop and think, why are you motivated for certain relationships? For example, I always say, we depend on people to like us, so we will like ourselves. But that stuff gets started really early. But because you want to please your parents, you want to please that person, you want to, there's something called moral development, moral reasoning. In graduate school, they taught us that ages 8 to 11, 8 to 12, that's when you start looking at moral reasoning, right or wrong, good girl, bad girl. It's funny. I used to see this stuff in my daughter's preschool. I remember, they do this thing about you change your color in the classroom. You're a good girl, you get like, I forgot what color it was, but, or you get your color moved down. If you get your color moved down, you're a bad girl. You talk too much, you get your color moved up, you're a good girl. So, moral reasoning, it gets developed from home and then it gets into classrooms and it's reinforced there. That's what you call normalizing judgment. So normalizing, it's a way of conforming. It's a way of conforming something that they want to be normed. So essentially from early home, right, if you want to be a good girl, you need to do XYZ. I don't know what it was for you. Maybe you couldn't, I don't know what you couldn't do or what you should do. You couldn't have certain friends or you couldn't. And let me just pause here, not to say we shouldn't have resolutes. Remember, I'm not totalizing. I'm glad I introduced that word earlier. So we're not totalizing where all experiences are all negative. No, 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 no. But we're being curious, though, about the ones that were not helpful and they did cause harm. So this podcast is looking at being curious about these things and undoing the harm that was done to our ego. The ego is our executive function, a part of our personality, the one that helps us to, mediate right and wrong, the one that helps us to execute and make decisions, healthy decisions, hopefully. Our ego helps us to have, tolerance for things and to have, tolerance and, handle frustrations. So the ego is a very locomotive part of our brain that helps us to live. And you can see then by just a quick overview of the ego how if it has a lot of harm done to it, you're not going to be executing very nicely, are you? Am I? You know you're not. You're going to be second guessing yourself, right? So second guessing yourself sometimes also shows up in when the obstacles you sis. Like you're not sure about taking that job. You're not sure if you should, I don't know, write that letter. You're not sure if you should do a podcast. I don't know. You're not sure if you should write that book. You're not sure you should go back to school. I mean, all kinds of things. You're not sure you should speak up for yourself on the job. You're not sure, you're not sure, you're not sure. So the obstacles you sis are maybe you're dating someone and you're probably asking yourself, oh my gosh, when am I going to be enough? Once again, second guessing yourself. When is this person ever going to see me for who I am? But the real question is, do you see you for yourself? So we depend on others to like us so we can like ourselves. And that's unfortunate because we've been taught that. We've been taught that very early, right? Instead of the opposite, right? So I just went over what normalizing judgment is, right? Maybe I should pause here so you can really listen and think about that. So normalizing judgment, it's pretty serious. A person like to use the word brainwash. I think that's kind of going too far. I mean, but in a sense it is. In the literature, they call that division of classification, where you're spoiled or unspoiled, where you're deserving or undeserving. And, it begs the question, where did our parents learn that? If you're from the Caribbean, we got that double. You know what I mean? I remember when I was in high school, we start high school early. I was 12 because we were on the British system. So we start high school early. And I remember my twin brother, he did something wrong. And you know how they spanked him? They whipped him with a cane, just like slavery. So yeah, I'm being strategic how I want to introduce this part. So they whipped him over his back with a cane. Yeah, and I cried. I remember I was like, why? I couldn't understand. I forgot what my brother did. I don't know what he did. And he couldn't play soccer for a while either. I don't know what my brother did. But I remember the schoolmaster, yep, that's what they call him, schoolmaster. They took him in the office and I heard about it and he got caned for whatever he did. So think about that. So that right there is normalizing judgment. He did something and he got penalized and that was, hey, division of classification. You do something wrong, you're spoiled, we're going to fix that. And hey, it wasn't a regular spanking, it was a cane over his back. Where did that come from? Huh? That's normalization of judgment. That is, hey, you break a rule, you're not allowed to explore that, and we're going to make sure you never do it again. Yeah, he never did it again. He never did it again. But then you think about, the emotional impact from that. What did he learn? Right? In those early formative years, and he started high school before me because he had passed his common entrance before I did. So he was actually 11 when that happened. So think about the emotional impact on him. What did he learn from that? What did that do to his ego? What emotions did that elicit from him? How did that shape him emotionally and socially? So normalizing judgment has a lot to do with, rules and norms that are created by institutions. So now let's go to another level with normalizing judgment. You know what else it does? It sets us up, you and I, to measure, pay attention. It sets us up to measure, right? What we do, what we think, our thoughts, our life against, right? The norms that were created by institutions. That's pretty profound to me. It really is. So what does that look like? Well, think about it. Whatever decisions you make in your life, we talked about when the obstacles you sis. So when you're making decisions about whether you should do this podcast, well, number one, what's the institutionalized norm? I'm not smart enough. I don't know enough. People are going to think that, I'm not qualified to talk about that. Or who's going to listen to me? I don't have 3 PhDs. That's a norm. That's a norm. I mean, here's another example. It is no wonder then society rewards persons who are perhaps doctors, lawyers, engineers, those big ones. Society reward those persons much more than persons who decide that, what, I just want to, I want to be a teacher. And you know what, I often always say, how did these doctors and lawyers get to where they are? Well, somebody taught them. Somebody had to teach, you know? So that's just another example of normalizing judgment. And of course, these are superficial terms or examples. They're deeper examples that perhaps you can relate to that I don't know about you and you don't know about me. But this is just to kind of scratch the surface for you to think about how deep this thing runs. So the obstacle, when the obstacle is You-Sis. Again, for some girls, ages from 3 to 6, if you're not raised by a dad, or if you've had disruption or had your a lot of disruption with your home life growing up, so your attachment style was very disrupted and very confused and very inconsistent. So think about what and how that sets you up, right, to be motivating your relationships. Think about that, right? If you don't have that male figure cementing your identity, opening the door for you, telling you that you're loved, that you're beautiful, that you're okay. When you make a mistake, let's talk about it. Right? If you don't have, like a very warm, nurturing mom or dad, specifically for girls, think about how you will be motivated for relationships with men later on, right? I often see this, you know again. So normalizing judgment, and so these things get normalized because, well, number one, then you're set up now to feel important, and so you'll end up doing things, accepting things. Once again, remember that example I gave. You attract the rejection. You're a magnet for the dejection. You're a magnet for people not respecting you. Because deep down is because those emotions of feeling lack of respect for yourself, of feeling unimportant, it's already in there. It was already illicit. It was created, and it's in there. It's embedded. But the good news is that you can undo the harm that was done to your ego. You can undo it. I've done it. You can. It's work. I tell myself this all the time, and I say it in my practice, look, this is going to take work. It didn't get there overnight. All right, so I'm going to pause here. We're going to play some more music. When I get back, we're going to take a look more at, basically, as a result of when the obstacles you sis, these things that have been elicited, have been created, have been reinforced, and how when we're unaware of them, typically how that sets us up, and unconsciously how we're on default by them, and how we still live like that today. Look at some more examples, and as a result, how we define ourselves. Let's pause. I'm having fun, guys. I like talking about this stuff. No, that's an understatement. I love talking about this stuff. So let's play some more William Murphy as you contemplate what I'm talking about. And if I'm going too fast, let me know. I'll slow down. Here we go. Face to face. back. I'm back. I'm back. Oh my gosh, did I tell you how much fun I'm having? I'm having way too much fun. Oh my gosh, way too much fun, guys. I keep saying that I'm gonna film the podcast. I'm gonna work on that. Maybe not this year. Maybe at the beginning of the year, I'll start filming. So you can see that I have my cup of tea and my blanket, and I have some more fun. Um, yeah, we're gonna have a good time. So, I don't know. I forgot to say this part too, about when I was introducing. I love to go over this part, talking about the fact that this podcast is really about looking at yourself, looking at checking judgment like a baggage. Like you go to airlines, you check that stuff. Don't bring it here. It's a judgment free zone, honestly. So, when we're doing podcasts, when we're working together, we leave that stuff outside. Because if you don't, then you're not going to have any freedom. And I often talk about faith and love in my work. I know it's weird. Um, Persons in the community will say, I don't hear therapists talking about that. I said, well, that's because maybe they're not yet comfortable yet. Well, I am, because I understand that there are different types of love. And without love in this work, it doesn't move. It doesn't matter how much methodology and intervention and theory. Yeah, you should know all that, because if not, then you're not a clinician. But you need that. But, you need the humanistic side of things. And I love to infuse that in the work that I do. And definitely this podcast is no exception. So let's keep going. All right, so it's 8:38. And before we continue, I forgot to give some more updates too. So the book, oh my gosh, did you watch I gave an update this past Monday, I think, or Tuesday. I did an update video. I was like, do my rah-rah thing. It was funny. But I'm going to post it again. So I'm going to repost that video tomorrow. So a couple of updates about the book. The book, it's talk about revisioning. Oh my gosh, revisioned, redeveloped, all that reword. Yeah, it's nice. It's really, really nice. I have to tell you, I was telling you in my video how sad I was. And I think I did another video talking about how I truly was so sad about the first publisher and how things really went sour. But I have to tell you that all things do work together for good, because this book now is in better hands. It's now in the hands of an international publisher. I'm really excited about that. And so the book will be ready at the end of this month. And the shirts are here. I am a woman of abundance. Woo-hoo. Oh, we have to clap on that. We have to clap. Yes, the shirts are here. So all persons, oh my gosh, you've been so kind. You've been so patient with me. The shirts are here. So they're going to be here. Check with UPS yesterday. I was not in the office yesterday. They came and I wasn't there, but the shirts are here. I'm excited. Thanks to Maria Villa, my assistant. She's been gracious to me too. I'm tracking that stuff down, making sure it does not get shipped back where it came from. So no, but we're going to have those shirts next week. I can't wait, because I'll do an update video showing you the shirts. So I'm really excited about that. What else? And I now have a YouTube channel. I know I'm trying to do different things. And you know what? You don't stop trying to do different things, because you have a place. There's a voice. Your voice is here for a reason. Listen, energy doesn't die. It renews and it becomes something better and greater. And that's you, honestly, and that's me. So, yep, the YouTube channel. It's New Beginning Healing Institute. And you know what? I started a year ago, shy, not knowing what I was doing, but I just knew that I need to try and see how it would work out. So I've decided now to upload all of my Munda Parative videos. Again, receiving a lot of feedback about the Munda Parative videos and how they are helpful. And, it's, again, like I always share when I respond to comments, they're encouraging for me too. I'm not exempt from being encouraged, not because I'm a vessel or a conduit. I still need to be encouraged too, which is why I love doing this work. So yeah, the book will be out by the end of October, just in time for Thanksgiving. The shirts are here. They'll be here next week. Those who have pre-ordered, you can expect to get your stuff by the end of the month. The YouTube channel is up and running. You can check that out and share that, because that's what this community is about. It's about sharing. So one more time, let's just give an applause for that. Yay! All right, so let's wind down. Let's pipe it down. It's 8:41. So we promised to talk about, what else does this look like? What else does it look like? So oftentimes, as a result of, this sense of self, how it's set up is important. And remember, we don't totalize. Nope, never do that. Write that word down. Never totalize. Don't interpret everything as negative, because that's not true. All right. So, so essentially, how do we do this? How do we arrange to fail? That's always on my topic. And I say it all the time. How is it we arrange to fail over and over again? Why? Well, it's because we oftentimes, develop we define ourselves, I should say, We often define ourselves and our character, in the nature and the character of other persons. So said another way, we define ourselves then. Remember, self implies others. See, there it is again, right? It shows up even in adulthood. We've been defining ourselves, and because we internalize those things, in the nature and characteristic of these other people. Can you believe that? That's profound to me. I'm serious. When I was in graduate school learning this stuff, I was like, "Ah, that's why I feel like crap." That's why. I remember I was in my English lit class. Her name was Miss Brideau, Brideau. And I kid you not, we were talking about Shakespeare, and this poem she brought up, and I was sitting in the class and tears flood my face. And I was like, it was talking about a girl and her dad. I forgot how it was. I was at Palm Beach Lakes High School, and I sat in the class and I was numb. I'm not kidding you. I remember like it was yesterday. All right. And I was like, oh, that girl is me. That girl was me. Oftentimes growing up, I heard I wasn't going to become anything. That's just the truth. Now, looking back on that stuff, I laugh because, really, I have the power to become what I want, and so do you. I often heard, well, because I was a teen mom, I heard, oh, you're a disgrace. Man, I felt that. I did. It's so funny. In Healing of the Heart book, there's a poem in there, so let me just throw a poem in there tonight, talking about stop living in their shadows. My goodness, I have to read a portion of that poem to you tonight at the end. I was living in the shadows of, of different persons. And again, I'm not pointing fingers, I'm not blaming, but this is part of my narrative. I can't lie, I can't hide it. This is part of my story. I was told I wasn't going to become anything. I was told that I was a disgrace. I was oftentimes, looked upon like I was second, third, fourth, and fifth class. And people have a way of, I don't know if this resonates with you. People have a way of, when your life has changed, when your life is different, they still want to remind you of what you did. They still want to remind you, oh, you remember you did that and this and that. And the thing about that is life is moving on, you're evolving, and you're trying to get better, and they're trying to remind you. So the obstacles you sis is when we decide to still listen to those things. You have the desire to be different. You can undo the harm. You can undo the harm that was done to the ego. You can undo the harm that people are still trying to do to you. And in essence, trying to still get you to fulfill what they said about you. And you know what? You can stop that. You can. And I love talking about that because it's true. So again, we're winding down, we're summarizing. Normalizing judgment is a real thing. And again, I talked about where did our parents get that from? And I hint earlier, so let me bring it up now. Well, we were all colonized. Some people, if you're Haitian American or Haitian, you're colonized by the French. We're colonized by the British. We're colonized by the Spanish. We're colonized by a lot of different people, countries that were peopled by different people. Okay, and so I even gave an illustration about my brother being caned. Well, where did the schoolmaster learn to cane him? In his formative years where he was growing up, his emotions, social and emotional skills. So normalization takes place from institutions, from the institution as families. I mean, it gets normalized all the way around. And before you know it, the unconscious has large doses of insecurities. Yep. Did I say that? Yeah, I did. Yep. Large doses of insecurities. And before you know it or not, these are the things that your unconscious is turning over and over again and leaving you unproductive, leaving you second guessing yourself. Should I start that business? Well, why not? Should I write that book? Should I change my job? Should I apply for that job? Should I apply for a promotion? I mean, should I plant the garden? Oh my gosh, I used to always hear, I don't have a green thumb. I promise you, I don't have a green thumb. I mean, seriously, I can't hang a curtain. I can't. And these are well meaningful people, some of them, not all. Again, all or nothing. That's very flawed. All right. So normalizing judgment versus moralizing. I didn't get too much into moralizing tonight, but I'll just, touch a little bit on there. Moralizing basically says this: when you're trying to make a decision, the wrong or right about it. Wrong or right. But again, what is this moralizing tinged by? Right? So yeah, is it wrong or right? What does that look like? Like capital punishment. That's not a good example right now because I know something recent happened in the news. But capital punishment, right, is to deter, certain criminal activity. But is it the best option? Well, some people use morals to pretty much guide their decision. Well, killing is wrong. And you can see how this goes on. But I'm talking about on an emotional social context, right? Moralizing, for example, you shouldn't wear that red lipstick if you listen to that episode, or don't wear the pants because it's wrong morally. Well, what is that? That is definitely contaminated by normalization. And a lot of that has to do with culture. And culture has a lot to do with colonization. So if you really pay attention to these concepts and themes that I've talked about tonight, you can see pretty much how the self, the formation of self, the view of self, the world view of self, oftentimes is very confused and very contaminated. And we are fed large doses of insecurities, and that has tremendous impact upon the quality and the fulfillment of the life that you live. And every single day, it is work. It is work to undo the harm that was done to the ego, which is why many times I really invoke the spiritual aspect of your identity into the work that I do and into my own life and into the lives of my children, because I know the literature is very clear about that too, that is the underpinning to undoing the harm that's done to your ego, so you can reauthor your life, revision your life, and so you can have new resources for yourself. So when the obstacle is You-Sis, I hope I gave you some, concepts, some illustrations to think about in light of perhaps your intimate relationships, right? In light of your professional life, in light of your spiritual life, right? And if you listen keenly enough, a lot of this boils down to culture, normalization, social context. It's culture. And again, who affects culture? Where did culture come from? We were all colonized by people, peopled by people. And so, I don't know, I invite you tonight to take a pause, ask yourself questions from what we talked about tonight. And again, if you want to email me, write me, whatever it is, perhaps if you want to have more discussion about this, I don't know what you want to do with this information, but I invite you to engage with this topic tonight. We're going to pause here. I'm going to give myself a round of applause. But you have to give yourself kudos because I'm enjoying the show so much. And I appreciate your input tonight, those persons who are writing. So I'm going to pause here and play a little bit more music. But we're going to end with Samuel Medas tonight. Let me just pause here and just give myself a round of applause and clap you guys for joining me tonight. Yay! So excited. So we're going to play a little bit more of, let's switch it up a little bit. Let's do Samuel Medas, and we're going to play my favorite. You guys know what it is, right? Here it is. Let them talk, right? But what do you say? What do you say?
Everybody's saying that it can't be done. He say, she say, they say what they wanna say. Oh, yeah. Everybody's saying that it can't be done. Cause they see giants walking in the lane, but I don't really care if I'm the only one who's saying yes we can. Cause those that are for me are far more than those who are against me. We're pulling out our swords. Anything that don't look like you and talk like you, you gotta come down. Death to the ways of the city, with me carrying divinity set apart, tear it down to the earth. The strongholds of poverty, greedy, simple living, and reveling in demonic prisons. Been given instructions to tear it down. The city is yours, saith the Lord. Be sure to tear down the things that I abhor. Look, follow my word to the letter for sure. Victory is given and show you secure. Listen to me and your ways to be pure. The first and the last will drop dead to the floor. Blaze eternal fire from heaven, devour only heathen.
Let me crank it down. Let me crank it down. I promise to read to you a couple lines from Living in Their Shadow, because that's what I used to do. Given us the city. That's right, he has. And so you don't have to live in anybody's shadow. I definitely don't do that anymore. Just because, hey, like I shared in the first couple of podcasts, I've decided to do the work in my life. And I tell you what, I often tell even clinicians that I train now, if you don't do the work in your life, you can't work with other persons. It's just not going to work. It's just not. First of all, number one, you can't connect to yourself. there's disharmony in your configuration. It's just not going to work. And you're going to work with persons who have similar stories like you, and you won't be able to handle it. It's just going to be chaos, and you're causing harm to others and yourself. So I often always say, you cannot do this work if you haven't done the work yourself. It just doesn't work. So I'm thankful that, I have done the work in my life, and it's still a work in progress, right? And so living in your shadows, that's not doing the work. That's pointing fingers. So here's a couple lines from Healing of the Heart book. And again, it'll be officially out October 31st. And by the way, let me give the website for that. I didn't even do that, right? It's www.healingoftheheart.co. Simple. Healingoftheheart.co. You type that into your search bar, it will come right up. So that's the website that I have dedicated to the book for those persons who want to continue to pre-order, because the pre-order availability is still there. And then after that, the price will go up just slightly on Amazon, not too much. So let's end tonight, as I promised, with the poem "Living in Their Shadow." Oh my gosh. It says, despite past failures, pain, and suffering, you're a person of worth, a child of the King. Valuable creature you are, destined to light the earth like sun, moon, and star. There's a plan for your life. You have dreams and beliefs. Hope is waiting to take flight. I'll stop there. So I don't know what you felt tonight, how or what you're feeling about the information that you heard tonight. Much of this information tonight, obviously, when I do my work, whether I'm doing a podcast, whether I'm teaching, or if I'm just doing whatever in my work, I always strive to ground my work in the literature. You have to, because that lends credibility to the work that is being done. And so when persons leave the space, they have something to reflect on. They can go look it up. They can do deeper work individually or with perhaps a professional like myself or others. But it gives you a path forward so you can continue to do the work in your life. And of course, then the experiential part, for example, the poem that I just read to you, and of course, some parts of my own story I shared, is to make sure that I can be authentic with you, so that way it gives you a chance to open up a bit to see yourself or begin to see yourself in ways that you have not done before. So thank you for listening to this podcast this evening. It's my privilege, really. And I often say that to you, privilege me, because you could choose to do something else right now, be on Instagram or Facebook or something, but you chose to spend the time together in a community fashion to talk about and to act upon, living better lives. So with that, I want to give you a last round of applause. And we're going to end with Samuel Midas. Thank you so much. See you next time. Next podcast is in 2 weeks, and you will get updates about that via my post and all the ways that I keep in touch with you. Have a good night, guys. Bye.
The Lord has given us the city. Oh, yeah.
Rock it out with me, guys.
He has given us the city. He has given us the city.
It's 8:55. We'll rock it out till 9 o'clock.
Yes, I heard of you. I know they got experience, but they don't have a clue. They can't see what I see, cause this is supernatural. Their plans are always failing, and this is factual. 99 experts could have told me that the battle can be won, but 10 righteous men could put off like 100 million. Rise up, King Jesus, like you did many times before. Cause any waterfall, kick open any door. Satan, no one for Lego, where you done it, promise me that you bless my every move. Enlarge my boundaries, that you dignify this nation and you serve a family. They say it can't be done, but you're the God of impossibilities. And I know the Lord has given us the city. 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 He has given us the city. The Lord has given us the city. City of redemption. Nothing is impossible with Jesus. I'll never be afraid to call on the name of Jesus. Never be afraid. We are not afraid to lift up the name Jesus, my strength, my God, no other name by which we can be saved but Jesus. My strength, my God. Don't trust in horses and chariots, but we will remember the name of the Lord. The name of Jehovah God. Yeah, Lord of Lords, my God, my Hallelujah.
Good night, guys. See you next time. Thank you so much.